big states, New South Wales and Victoria, the ACT jumped on board as well in saying that in the next 48 hours they will be shutting down non-essential businesses and services. Doing this before tonight's meeting is a bit strange. What's gone on there?
In effect, Victoria and New South Wales are locking in National Cabinet to a decision that was ordained by Victoria and New South Wales. As you say, the two biggest states, 50% of the population, more than 50% of the
forcing
population.
The hand of the National
Forcing
Cabinet.
the hand of National Cabinet.
Why? Because they were worried they wouldn't get their way in the meeting, or?
Time is of the essence in tackling this. The health crisis, as we've seen in the simple raw numbers, is showing that the longer we wait, the bigger the crisis becomes. A doubling of people infected, therefore a quadrupling of the challenge
in a week.
Every week. So it's
let's hope it doesn't continue to quadruple every week.
Well, this is obviously what they're thinking. They do want a shutdown, which can then drag into a lockdown.
And look, this is not a time for playing politics, but clearly listening to the Prime Minister, he's making very strong arguments in that interview about why shutting down is going to come at such a cost economically, to your kids' education, to the health workforce as well. He's making a powerful argument, really, not to necessarily shut down.
I thought he actually spelt out the consequence of lockdown pretty well. That said, I don't think he's actually. I think he's resisting it at the moment. It will eventually come, and I think it'll come this week, simply because of the intervention of Dan Andrews and Gladys Berejiklian. They've decided they're going to take it into their own hands. Victoria will shut schools from Tuesday. I can't see them reopening for many, many months.
And bottom line, either tonight, once they've finished this meeting, or first thing tomorrow, someone is going to have to clear up this list of what are essential and non-essential businesses, who's meant to be going to work and not.
We know that communications has been added to that list. We've heard that from the managing director of the ABC. We know from Scott Morrison, because he actually last week nominated a whole stack of industries, whether it be shopping centres, whether it be gas, electricity, those services. Gladys Berejiklian and Dan Andrews actually came up with a very consistent list themselves separately. So they've been in communication. Now, I understand that premiers and the Prime Minister do have their own methods of communicating outside of National Cabinet, and it's within this communication that the pressure has been put on the Prime Minister not to have the meeting on Tuesday as he had planned, as he had told us on Friday, no less, but drag it forward to today so that they can have some clarification, perhaps tonight even from the Prime Minister, but at least tomorrow, so that school kids can be told this is your last day. Well,
let's see what they come up with tonight and hope that there is some clarity around these things very quickly. On the economic package, it's a big deal. I think potentially the biggest stimulus or economic rescue package we've ever seen. $66 billion on top of what was announced only 10 days ago. We've seen in your story earlier some of the main elements of this. What do you think are the main concerns for the government right now about the economy?
Well, this is no longer about stimulus. This is all about keeping some lifeblood in government, inside business, while the economy effectively goes into stasis. Because that's the consequence of a shutdown and a lockdown for a whole swathe of business. There has to be some blood kept within that business to keep them alive, to enliven the business for when shutdown is lifted. Now, we know that the government is hoping that it be 6 months. It's quite clear that if we have a massive, massive health crisis, it could actually be less than that, but we don't want that health crisis. We've got a tension here between a health crisis that could spike horribly in the next few weeks unless we get on top of it, or we have a crisis nonetheless that goes for many, many months. The slower that crisis is, the longer it will be before businesses can get back to normal.
And that's why the Prime Minister is tonight talking about the next round of support.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. From the very start today, he said, look, this is not going to be the end of it.
No.
And we've gone from will they or won't they on surplus 2.5 weeks ago to suddenly talking about, it's going to be a deficit, suddenly to recession. It's virtually locked in. From your fascinating interview with the Prime Minister, he said it's academic. Now it's not, it's about trying to stop a depression, which is a sustained recession. And that is, it's horrific at a human life level, this challenge, but it's also horrific in an economic sense. On
another huge day in this crisis, ABC's political editor Andrew Probyn, thank you. I want to drill down a bit more detail now on this economic package and really what people can expect in terms of support. A lot of people have been keen to see the details of this, very worried about their prospects. Let's bring in our panel, Chris Richardson from Deloitte Access Economics, Jennifer Westacott, the head of the Business Council of Australia. I'm also joined by Cassandra Goldie from the Council of Social Service and Michelle O'Neill, the President of the ACTU. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Chris Richardson, can I go to you first? This is unprecedented, we keep on saying, but what do you think the economy really needs right now? Who needs support right now? And does today's package deliver it?
Today's package delivers a spectacular amount of support. But it's not enough. And Andrew said it a moment ago. The virus numbers are getting bigger in Australia, a factor of 4 every week. Roll forward 5 weeks, unless we can slow that down, the problem is 1,000 times bigger than today. So pretty much everything in the economic package today makes great sense. We're fighting really hard to protect jobs, and if those jobs are lost, that welfare safety net is much, much better than it was. That is entirely to be applauded. The main game, though, remains health. If we can slow that stunning, that geometric speed at which this is going, the economy is better, our health is better, but it's a really, really hard balance to hit. We do need to preference health over immediate support for the economy. That is the main game.
Now, as I mentioned, a lot of workers, a lot of business owners as well are currently grappling with what to do. Jennifer Westacott, let me ask you, the level of support has grown for business today, the aim for them to be able to keep their staff on the books as much as possible. But as I say, a lot of particularly smaller and medium-sized businesses are weighing up if they don't have customers coming through the doors, how long can they keep operating? What do you make of the assistance today?
Look, I think it's the right package at the right time. I think it's focused on assisting the most vulnerable businesses, assisting the most vulnerable people, and it's sort of trying to put a floor into the economy. And there are some very important features in it. I think the cash flow assistance to small businesses, the $100,000 that's targeted to businesses to keep people working is hugely important. We've got to try and keep people in their jobs.
Just on that, is it enough to do that? Will it make the difference between staying open or not?
Well, it looks pretty big, but I think to Chris's point and to the Prime Minister's point, more is going to have to be done. The income support, which Cassandra will no doubt talk about, the job seeker assistance is very good, and the really good part of that package is giving it to people who've been stood down so that they get income support, but they can go back to their employment. We've got to have that capacity to bounce back. The access to is important. We're very pleased to see the more flexible insolvency arrangements that allow directors some relief, some regulatory relief, so they can keep working their companies. Look, I think the really crucial thing here, and it goes to Chris's point, is getting the right balance. Obviously, the top priority is to keep people safe, but we have got to keep our essential industries going, our manufacturing, our mining and resources, our financial services, our food production, our major retailers, not just the supermarkets, but the people who are selling cleaning products, the people who are selling office equipment so that people can work from home. We have to try and make sure that we have these safe workplaces, that we keep people safe, we keep our health system running, but at the same time that we've got that floor in the economy so that we can bounce back.
Just on the point you're making there, Jennifer Westacott, it sounds like an argument against locking down, shutting down wide parts of the economy. You're suggesting safe workplaces could still be protected.
It's not an argument against one thing or another. It's an argument that I guess goes to Chris's point and the Prime Minister's point, that this is a very delicate balancing act. And to the Prime Minister's point, whatever we do, we're doing it for quite a sustained period of time. And the primary objective is to keep people safe. But we also, to the Prime Minister's point today, lives and livelihoods, we have to have the capacity to keep those essential things that our economy needs to keep ticking over and that we need in order for people to live. And so, you know, I think this is changing on a kind of constant basis. We have to kind of be as flexible as we can, but we do have to try and strike that balance between obviously the top priority to keep people safe, but making sure that we've got those economic underpinnings so that we can protect people's livelihoods and we can bounce back from this.
Cassandra Goldie, let me come to you. There's a fair bit there, in fact a doubling essentially of the dole, of the Newstart payment while ever this continues. And that will apply to not only those who are currently on Newstart, but also those who are soon to join it, as well as those who are stood down but not made redundant entirely from their employer. Sole traders, casuals as well. Perhaps you could explain to us what that's going to mean for those. Many people, I've been talking to people, you've been talking to people who are worried about the work drying up and what they're facing. What do they get today?
Well, look, it's a huge relief to see finally this recognition that Newstart was never going to be enough. $40 was never going to be enough for the almost 1 million people who have been trying to live in it already. And now, of course, many, many more people really worried about that. So there's a huge relief that we're seeing this doubling of the payment. And of course, we'll continue to urge the government to make sure that this is a longer term direction that we're seeing in terms of a substantial increase to Newstart. Look, we're really worried about there are some significant groups that are not included in this particular announcement today, particularly flagging for carers and people with disability who are on the higher pension, but many are in contact with us saying we're really, really worried, very, very vulnerable. And the point, David, you asked about students, that's not our understanding that full-time students will be included in this, nor international students, so we're going to urgently follow up on that.
Well,
and asylum
just,
seekers
sorry, just
who
on
are...
that, the PM did say students on youth allowance would get it.
Yes, but that's not our understanding,
well,
David.
So
if the Prime Minister, that's his intention, we'll certainly follow up urgently because the numbers don't stack up in terms of who's currently accessing special benefit from the large number of international students who, obviously they're now here with us, won't be able to leave. We just need to make sure asylum seekers included. There's about 7,000 of those asylum seekers who don't have any social security rights at the moment. We're just going to make sure that we've got the coverage we need, and so we're going to really continue to talk to the government and urge them to fix those crucial gaps. Look, the standing down measure, I know Michelle's going to talk about this. We do want to make sure that that connection to work is retained for anybody possible and to make sure that industry assistance is going into keeping people in jobs and wages and keeping services going.
Well, Michelle O'Neill, you're the President of